So his thing is there's no evidence that there was a coup. My thing is, even if there was a coup, there was enough reason for the people in Ukraine to not want to join with Russia.
What's your stance on the Russian-Ukraine conflict?
Yeah, I guess in the broadest of senses, from 1991, Ukraine has been a country that was recognized by everybody around the world. Fast forwarding through a lot of stuff, in 2014, there was an ousting of a leader. Some people call it a revolution. I think some people incorrectly call it a coup. In response to that ousting, Russia invades Crimea, and Russia begins to fund and back separatist movements. Ukraine refers to them as terrorists in the east, in the Donbass. And then from 2014 on to 2023, we've got basically military conflict that's been escalating in 2022. The invasion happened, everything is subsumed under that actual invasion, and here we are today. I think that the broadest of senses, well, I'm sure we'll get into the details of all of this. I don't think that the initial Russian invasion into Crimea was at all justified. I don't think that
in 2014.
In 2014.
Okay.
Yep. I don't think that there's any evidence of any CIA coup or any sort of backing from the West showing that Euromaidan was artificially inflated by Western forces. I don't think there was any evidence that there was an actual coup d'etat. I don't think that the backing of separatist leaders in the East is good for anybody. It's not good for Ukraine. It's not good for the people that live there. It only benefits Russia if they can manage to peel away those separatist states and incorporate them into some kind of Russian federation.
Okay.
And I think that Russia is in the moral wrong basically from start to finish with this entire conflict.
So you don't think they had any real basis for invasion, whether it was 2014 or now?
Absolutely not.
What about, and just playing devil's advocate, and I'll turn it to Ryan here in a second. What about the fact that they were planning to invade the Donbass region in March?
Who's planning to invade?
The Ukrainians.
It's their territory. What do you mean invade?
Well, it's ethnic Russians that dominate that area.
It doesn't matter. They're Ukrainian citizens.
Yeah, I mean, there's ethnic Mexicans that live in San Antonio, but if Mexico tries to invade, we would still stop them. It doesn't give them the right to invade just because people speak the same language.
You can't invade your own territory. It's their territory.
In fact, like, let's take this analogy further. The majority of people who live
kill 14,000 people in the Donbass.
Right, but the same. My point is, you don't have the right to do it just because those people. By the way, if Russia is giving them weapons and money to do so, then they fight back. Then the narrative becomes, look at what Ukraine is doing. They're killing all these people in Donbass. Well, then stop giving them weapons. That's the difference. If again, I'm going to use this example because, you know, a lot of people from this country, if Mexico started funding terrorists that live in San Antonio, Harlingen, and fucking Brownsville, the United States would do something to stop it. And then the news media would be like, do you see the Americans killing these Mexicans inside? No, at some point, if you attack, they get to attack back. And his argument is going to be sovereignty. My argument is even if there was a coup, the problem is they invaded Ukraine. They invaded Crimea. Invading Crimea doesn't make the populace more likely to be pro-Russian. It makes them less likely to be pro-Russian. Secondly, their parliament had almost unanimously agreed to trade agreements with the West. And their president, on the last second, switched sides and said, no, we're not going to take these trade agreements. And then that's where all these people started rioting. My point is, even if there was a coup, which he's going to say there's no evidence, but that's how the CIA works. They don't leave evidence. I'm still saying there's enough reason for the people in Ukraine to not want to be a part of Russia after you understand what I'm saying? You bite my leg. Maybe I don't want to be friends with you anymore. You take Crimea. Maybe we don't want to be with Russia anymore. So his thing is there's no evidence that there was a coup. My thing is, even if there was a coup, there was enough reason for the people in Ukraine to not want to join with Russia. That's my point.
Ryan, what's your stance and response to that?
Crimea was not annexed. That was a secession movement, and it's mostly ethnic Russians that live there anyway. Russia's not going to lose their base on the Black Sea, so they have every reason to back it. But invaded how? It wasn't a military invasion of Crimea. Crimea left Ukraine. And Ukraine did attack the Donbass, and probably Russia did back separatists. But I think you have to go back before that. This was avoidable. And Zelensky's talking about the Belarus memorandum. I'm so tired. Okay, flew here from Asia. Memorandum, which is about how they had to get rid of their nuclear weapons because they couldn't afford to maintain them. And it was kind of political blackmail to say, send us money, or we're going to reduce these weapons, but you're going to have to pay us to maintain them. Everyone agreed to get rid of nukes in that. Zelensky brings it up again. And that's a flex showing the Russians don't want a nuclear armed Ukraine on their border. They know they're trained to NATO standards, and they don't want NATO expansion. They've seen what happened in Libya. They've seen what happened in Yugoslavia. And so I understand the Russians' fear about this. When they finally have a pro-Russian leader in charge that was going to accept the economic agreements that were favorable to the Russian state. You have to see they were walking into this 15 billion euros in debt. Ukraine's had corrupt governments from the 90s to now, one oligarch after another. So there's a lot of people within the state that they were in favor of some sort of economic partner, either the Americans in the EU or the Russians. And obviously it's in U.S.'s interest for it to not be with the Russians. And Newland and the rest of them were, when there was violence that both sides could take advantage of. So you had protests against the election results, and then you had counter protests. And the counter protesters were walled up in Odessa. I think 48 people burned alive. Mm-hmm. And that's insane. And when you look at Maidan, it's very similar to Syria with snipers shooting police and things. And so many people believe, there's foreign-backed separatists.
So would you, I guess, so you disagree with Destiny because he's saying that Destiny's saying there was no reason for Russia to invade. So you're saying there was.
No, he's saying moral. He's saying they're unjustified to invade. That's different than what he's saying. He's saying,
he's saying that. I mean, we had all these issues.
I'm explaining why they would say they did it.
Hold on, I think Destiny would understand there's a reason for them to invade. The question is, do they have the right to invade? And going back to what you're saying
hold
before,
on, wait, real quick, because I would want to fight on almost every single one of those.
Okay. Can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah, go for
the
it.
President who went and took that friendly Russian deal, he agreed previously to not take that.
We're going to have a
deal.
debate, and I don't have the internet. I don't think anyone else should.
I'm sorry. I just took notes. I apologize.
I
can stop doing it. Anyway,
just get rid of phones.
Yeah.
The point is that,
wait. The facts are the facts. Why should that matter? There's a lot of things to keep track of. Like that 14,000 figure of deaths you cited. I don't even know where that comes from. It's like a misciting of like the UNHCR report. That's not true. That 14,000 civilians have been killed. The fact that Russia didn't invade, that's not true. Spetsnaz and other special infantry were seen literally going when Russia called that snap 150,000 troops that they collected on the eastern border for a distraction on February 22nd. That's not true. The idea that Russia would see what happened in Yugoslavia and Libya, that's not Russia. Why would NATO attacking those countries have anything to do with NATO attacking Russia?
February 22nd is not what I was talking about with Crimea.
They're not what?
February 22nd is the hot war from last year.
And 2014, I'm talking 2014.
So that was the same date, actually.
On 2014, there was a Russian invasion. There were Russian troops that went through Sevastopol that were dropped off. There were Spetsnaz, there were special forces, the Little Green Men, the election that they held afterwards, the locking of the checkpoints to the north. Like you agree.
You
like
don't
even
agree
Putin doesn't
you
deny
think that election was just a farce, rigged?
I don't know if the election was a farce, but I do know that the election was held. There were reports of intimidations on the ground by the Little Green Men, and that there was a report that I think 97% of those people ended up supporting separating and joining Russia, and that election wasn't allowing any independent observers whatsoever. Are you asking me if it was rigged? I don't know. Do I trust it? Absolutely not.
The other issue is the president in 2014, he passed anti-protest laws, and right before he doesn't take those favorable trade relations with EU, he switches his position. So when you're saying, like, my point is, he wasn't the whole time he was pro-Russia. Right before, everyone was surprised when he went ahead and voted for the pro-Russian package. And that's the reason why it makes me even less think, you're saying maybe he's corrupt. That doesn't fit with the CIA plot. The point is, there's that many people protesting. Their parliament is almost entirely in agreement with joining with EU, and they've already had part of their country taken away. You're saying that they separated, that's fine. But if I'm a Ukrainian, I still don't like the fact that Crimea is part of Russia. It doesn't make me want to vote for Russia. It doesn't make me want to join with Russia. That's the issue that I have. What I'm saying is, he's saying there was no CIA plot. I'm saying if there was a CIA plot, I don't think it makes any fucking difference. I think it would be the same thing either way. I think they're in a situation where you've lost part of your country, and the parliament has voted to join with favorable trade agreements with the EU, and then all of a sudden your president one day decides to not do it, and then there's a huge riot, and the president has to leave the country. And where does he go? Where does he go when he leaves the country? Everybody? He goes to Russia. That's where he escapes to. So that's my issue, right? I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here.